You know, Juneteenth. Do you know what Juneteenth is? You do now, right? It's a national holiday, and it's long, long overdue to be celebrating this time in our nation's history. Juneteenth is a holiday, a federal holiday that takes a step back and talks about the emancipation of individuals that were put into bondage and slavery in this country, and how they were freed in those states, the Confederate states that fought against the nation and tried to retain slavery. And so it is a beautiful federal holiday, and one that I look at as more of a reason than a lot of others. Reverend Richie Butler joins us right now. He's a senior pastor at Dallas, Texas. Reverend, good to have you coming down the road with us.
Glad to be with you as well.
Now, your congregation, when you talk about Juneteenth, what do you talk to them about? How big of a celebration was this with your congregation?
Well, I pastor a predominantly African-American congregation, so it's been part of our tradition in terms of celebrating, since I was a kid. But I think this year in particular, the fact that this is the first official year that it is a national holiday and what that means. And I think it opens up and offers an opportunity for our congregation to be part of what I believe an educational channel for the rest of the nation to fully understand the historical significance so that, because as those who don't know their history are prone to repeat it. And so to avoid historical missteps in the future, we really need to understand where we've come from.
You talk about an educational channel. There are people that know more about it just because of it. And as you pointed out, you've been celebrating it for quite some time. Why the chasm? Why the divide? Why weren't people that I know as friends, why didn't I know more about it? Explain that to me.
I put it in these terms, and I think this helps people to understand it. If you've been in a relationship and you've made some bad mistakes in that relationship, you tend to want to forget what you did wrong. And let's just move into the future. Let's not even deal with the past, but let's be real. If healing is supposed to take place, if you're really supposed to build a much firmer foundation, you got to address and confront the past. And most of us would rather just avoid it and let's forget it and just sing kumbaya and let's just all get along. And that's not healthy, and it doesn't make for whole individuals or a whole community or nation by ignoring. And I just think that's been part of the legacies that people just want to, sweep slavery and, the good. We celebrate the good. We mention the bad, and we completely ignore the ugly of our past. And we're never going to get better. And I think for people of color, it's like, we got this wound and you don't want to dress the wound, and you keep throwing, salt on the wound. Let's deal with it so we can heal and all of us can become whole.
You obviously have a calling. That's why you're a reverend, and your belief in God and a higher being. Do you wonder at all with what is going on in our world, where people are taking a Confederate flag and trying to overthrow the United States government? Do you wonder at all if this wasn't the perfect time for this nation to recognize Juneteenth, the perfect time to have people take a step back, even though it would have been right to have this federal holiday sooner, for people to take a step back and have conversations like the ones we're having?
I do think, there is divine ordering, and I think we play a role in that, our obedience and disobedience. But it truly all begins to work itself, to this place of reckoning and hopefully triumph as a nation when we truly come together. But when you think about the fact that we've been in a pandemic and people are in a self-reflective mode, we've experienced, everyone experienced the murder of George Floyd, and that opened up this this notion that we need to embrace and deal with race, and so I think it's and Juneteenth is just part of that building block of our country coming to terms with our past, but also recognizing that what we have in common is much more defining and significant than what we don't have in common. And I always say, what unites us is greater than what divides us. And that's what we have to help those who are on the fringes to understand, that this is not taken away from anyone. And I think we live in a nation on some level where it's a zero-sum game. If you win, it means somebody else had to lose. Mm-hmm. And as a country, we have to recognize that if my brother wins, we're trying to create win-win opportunities for everyone. And from a business standpoint, what that means is there's more alpha out there to make more money.
Reverend, I want to throw this to you. I can't ignore the fact that your calling, your ministry is in Dallas, Texas. And Texas has been in the news all over lately. And what we're seeing out of Texas feels like it's 100-year step back in time. Yeah. Yes. It's almost depressing to the point where many of us are joking about whether or not we won the war when it came to the secession of Texas and in its war against Mexico. And so how do you piece that together, not just with your congregation, yes, but in your own mind, that where you choose to live or where you choose to use your calling is in a place where it isn't hard to make an argument is going backwards on the very things that you just talked to me about?
Yes. Well, I'll say, maybe to use a biblical reference in the book of Old Testament in Esther, where cousin Mordecai said to Esther, maybe you've been put in this place and position for such a time. So maybe I and others are in Texas for such a time. And maybe, those progressives, and I don't even want to label, have these political labels, but people who are just about common sense and about us working together and moving forward. I don't think it's by chance that we've had an influx of people from different parts of the country in Texas who I hope and believe will come together to counter the crazy that is, upon us.
I'm going to tell you something. I don't believe, I just threw Texas under the bus. But the fact of the matter is, I think it's here too. I think it's in the audience that you're speaking to right now. The only reason it's not more prevalent is because of the fact that we don't have people of color. And so you can easily drive by on the interstate and see a Confederate flag in somebody's back window, and somebody that completely blames everything that's happened in America on Black Lives Matter and wants and chooses to ignore what happened in this country. And so, I don't think it's fair to you and where you live to completely criticize the attitudes of the South when much of it is in the North as well. And I want to give you a chance to address that and speak to it.
Well, let me say this. I spend a lot of time, in conversation, and I have an organization called Project Unity where we are focused on bridging divides and addressing some of our most challenging issues: race, police, community relations. And one of the things I am so very passionate and committed to, I believe that we are all on a continuum when it comes to the issue of race and whatever the matter is. Some people are further along than others. You may be closer, 10 is, you're completely involved, and 0 is you're not, you're in the dark age, we're somewhere. From my perspective, I am committed to meeting people where they are. Yeah. And I'll say this last thing. It's so important because I think sometimes we want to call people out, like we want to call them, you're racist. I don't want to call you out. I want to draw you in, because if I call you out, basically what I'm going to do is isolate you. You'll dig a deeper hole of ideology and misinformation, and we will never move forward. And so we've got to be in the business of drawing people in and not simply calling people out.
Reverend, I'd like to be in your church someday. Thank you, sir. I appreciate you coming on.